So this problem says a window washer drops a wet sponge from a height of 64 feet. After how many seconds does the sponge land on the ground? So we are going to take our vertical motion equation, h equals negative 16 t squared plus vt plus s. The initial velocity, since the sponge is being dropped, the initial velocity is 0, assuming that he's not pushing it down. So if that's 0, this term is going to completely cancel out, and then 64 will be our initial height. So we'll say h equals negative 16 t squared plus 64. After how many seconds does the sponge land on the ground? We know that whenever we have a question where you're trying to find when something lands on the ground, you set h equal to 0, and then you factor to solve it. So 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 64t, or 64, no t. Now, since I see that 64t squared and 64 are both perfect squares, but the negative is right here, we can switch these two terms around so that the negative is in the middle, and then it would be a difference of squares. So 64 minus 16t squared, and then we can factor it as a difference of squares. You would just take the square root of 64, which is 8, and put it in the first spot. The square root of 16t squared is 4t. And then you would make 1 plus and 1 minus. And then we could solve it. So this solution, if you set this equal to 0, would give us negative 2. And then this solution would give us t equals 2. And since you can't have negative 2 for seconds, 2 seconds would be the answer. Another way you could simplify this is if you factored the 64 out, or the negative 64. So if you said h equals 16, not 64, and then you would get t squared minus 4. And so that would become negative 16 t plus 2 times t minus 2, which would give you answers of negative 2 and positive 2. So even with questions like this, you can still factor out a greatest common factor and then have a difference of squares to factor. The next question says a ball is thrown up into the air from a height of 5 feet with the initial vertical velocity of 56 feet per second. How many times does the ball reach a height of 54 feet? Explain your answer. So we're going to say our equation would be h equals negative 16 t squared plus initial height is 56, or initial velocity, so plus 56t, and then it's thrown up into the air, so the initial height is 5. Then you would set your equation equal to 54 because you're trying to find when it reaches a height of 54. So 54 equals negative 16t squared plus 56t plus 5. So once again, to solve this question, we need to subtract the 54 over to get that side to equal 0. So 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 56t, and then minus 49. Now this is a little bit different because it's not a difference of squares, but there is something else that we learned about a while ago. So let me give you a reminder. If you have something like, say 3x minus 4 squared, you would have to double it, 3x minus 4 times 3x minus 4, and FOIL, and you would get 9x squared. This, you would multiply those, but you have 2 of them, so minus 24x, and then plus 16. This is called a perfect square trinomial, and this is where the first and the last terms are perfect squares, and the middle term, so this would be a squared and b squared, and the middle term is twice whatever a times b is. Now look at your numbers here. The square root of 16t squared is 4t. The square root of 49 is 7. And if you multiply those together, you would get 28. And if you doubled it, you would get 56. The only problem is that we have a negative sign in front, which we can solve by factoring the negative sign out, or we could divide everything by -1 here since it's equal to 0. So 0 equals 16t squared minus 56t plus 49. And now it's a perfect squared trinomial. So you would set it up as just one factor but squared because you know it's going to repeat. And then you put the square root of this term here as 4t and the square root of this term here, which is 7. And then since there's a minus in the middle term, you'd put a minus in between them. Then the factors would be, or the solutions, if you set 4t minus 7 equal to 0, you could add the 7 over and get 4t equals 7, divide by 4, so 7/4 of a second. Now, since it is only one answer, 7/4, that's the only time it reaches that height. So that's how you solve that problem. And then we have 2 more. So here, polynomial has roots of 7/2 and -3/2. Write the polynomial in factored form where a, b, and c are integers. So you can't, this is saying that if this is your solution, what did it look like as a factor? So like think about the one we just did. 4t minus 7, the solution was 7/4. So the 4, if you're working backwards, you multiply the 4 over and then you subtract the 7 to get it on the other side. So here, if the solution is 7/2, it's kind of the same thing. You could take 2x, you multiply the 2 over, and you subtract the 7. For the other factor, you multiply the 2 over, but then add the 3 because it is -3, so you'd have to add the 3 over to get it by itself. And then this just says write the polynomial in factored form, so that would be it. You could also, if it didn't stay in factored form, you could FOIL it out and simplify it. And then the last question says create your own difference of 2 square polynomials, then have a partner check it. So if you want, you can try that question, making your own difference of squares. That is all for this lesson. Thank you and have a great day.